Hi guys, book reviews and essays are just finished, and the number one complaint was that people did not know how to integrate their quotes and make their writing seamless. That's what we're going to go through today. Just to begin really quickly, you do need to use quotes. This is not optional. Quotes demonstrate your knowledge, they back up your arguments, and they add credibility. This is really important, especially once you're in senior school. Few things here to avoid. Randomly throwing in a quote because you feel like the paragraph is too short. We saw a lot of this, especially with people adding quotes that were just way too long. You want the quotes to support you, not the other way around. The last one at the bottom says alternating between the double and single quotation marks. I know it seems silly, but it gets noticed by markers. You want to be consistent, and that does not matter whether it is a handwritten or typed response. I'm going to explain a couple of different ways of how to integrate your quotes, starting with the easiest one, where you just pick a single word or a small phrase and make it part of a sentence. What you do here is you make sure that the sentence makes sense with or without quotation marks, although please don't take them out. Obviously, you do need them to protect yourself from plagiarism accusations. So it would be incorrect to just chuck the quote in at the start or the end. For example, Lidlands, their boys require protection. That doesn't make sense if the quotation marks are there or not there. What you need to do is put it into the sentence, so either of the ones at the bottom are correct. For example, when the boys arrive on the island, their age is immediately obvious as many cannot fend for themselves and the Litlands require protection and assistance. Sometimes changing the order of the clauses or the parts of the sentence can help with this. If the sentence doesn't make sense without the quotation marks, it is not correct. Another main error, especially for people whose grammar and punctuation is normally very good, was to kind of lose your mind when you put a quote in. Usually your quotes that are not a full sentence and don't end with a full stop mean the full stop goes outside the quotation marks. So you've got down the bottom the correct version. On the other hand, Jack symbolizes violence and authoritarian leadership and has a metaphorical compulsion to track down and kill that was swallowing him up. So you can see the quote is not the whole sentence. The sentence ends after the quote. That's where the full stop goes. It's not correct, for example, in the first response to have two full stops, and it's not correct to have the full stop just inside the dialogue marks because it is not a full sentence without the stuff that comes before the quotation mark. This is where it gets a little bit more complicated. You might be struggling to fit in a quote that you think just doesn't work for a number of reasons. It could be that the tense is incorrect, it doesn't match what you've already said, or that there are extra words or not enough. To add or change quotes, you use square brackets, and to remove words, you use the ellipsis or the ... In the first example, it is understood what you were trying to say, but it's not totally correct because changes and is are present tense and wept is past tense. You could therefore change them, so in the first one to present tense or in the second one to past tense with much has changed by the end of the novel, so much so that Ralph wept for his innocence. You can see in that example too, I've also taken out the words in the middle of the sentence, in the middle of the quote. This is because I decided they weren't as relevant and I didn't want to include extra words. The note down the bottom is important, but it comes with a warning. You can change your explanation tense to match the quote if you would like to. However, most of the writing that you're doing now is extended responses or essays, and this is less helpful because you don't want to change the tense of just one sentence. You want it to be consistent throughout your whole piece. Another issue you guys had with integrating quotes was how to introduce them. This is the easiest way, just to have a short introduction and a comma, because it makes the quote fit in with your sentence rather than stick out. So the incorrect example is to have the quote as its own sentence. I've already explained that that's not a grammatically correct sentence. So you want to have the introduction with the quote. So the correct example there is, as violent events unfold, the narrator comments that the world, that understandable and lawful world, was slipping away. Again, the full stop goes outside the quote because the quote is not a full sentence. I put some words that you can use at the bottom. So if you say the narrator comments, that would also work with the narrator argues, the narrator demonstrates, the narrator responds, the narrator emphasizes. All of those would be correct. As our example, I'm going to use one of the paragraphs from our Lord of the Flies book review. The purple is our E in our teal. So remember, our teal is only the minimum standard that we expect, not the maximum. And I've shown that in my E here in my examples because I've used more than one. On the right-hand side, it identifies the things that we've just talked about how to integrate these into your full sentences. So we've already looked at the first example. As violent events unfold, the narrator comments that the world, that understandable and lawful world, was slipping away. That's my short introduction and my comma, and I haven't put a full stop but a comma at the end of the quote because the sentence continues. And you can actually see in that sentence that if I wanted to switch the order of it, I could still have a short introduction and a comma with something Golding himself may have thought during World War II was that world, that understandable and lawful world, was slipping away. It continues with Ralph. So Ralph tries to behave like an adult, thinking of the day's decisions as though he were playing chess, but at the end of the novel, he wept for the end of innocence. I've shown you how you can replace Ralph with he using the square brackets. It's not necessary, it's just a preference for me because I've already used Ralph once in that sentence. Hopefully this clarifies things for you and helps you with your writing next time. Thank you for listening.